All right, party peoples of the interwebs, if you want a preview of what America would look like under a Harris-Walz regime,
look no further than the United Kingdom.
Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler in my home office, and this is going to be a throwback to some vlogs that I was doing in 2018 when Tommy Robinson was last jailed for contempt.
Tommy Robinson was just let out of prison after serving 3 months of what was supposed to be a 13-month sentence for contempt of court. Let's go for a walk. For those of you who don't know who Tommy Robinson is, he is a British political activist or right-wing extremist, depending on who you ask. In May, he was sentenced to 13 months in jail. For contempt of court, he was tried, convicted, and sentenced within 5 hours of the alleged act of contempt. Let's go. Tommy Robinson is a very controversial character, to say the least, and the circumstances surrounding his trial, conviction, and sentencing for contempt within a 5-hour period, a sentence of 13 months in prison. At the time it occurred, it was mind-blowing, and I thought it was inaccurate or fake news. He was recently released from prison because his conviction was overturned in appeal, something I predicted at the time.
I have been following Tommy Robinson's persecution by the United Kingdom government and powers that be for going on 6 or 7 years now. Some of you might not remember that Tommy Robinson was jailed for contempt of court back in 2018, 2019, give or take. Arrested, tried, and convicted and jailed because he was allegedly recording the accused individuals in those grooming gangs in the United Kingdom, and he was not allowed recording them, although he was outside the court on public grounds recording them as they went into court. He was recording them, asking them some questions as they entered the courthouse. He was arrested, tried, jailed for something like several months, all within an hour. When I originally heard that story, I couldn't believe it was reality, but it was in fact reality. And they've done it again to Tommy Robinson. Now he has been sentenced to 18 months in jail for contempt of court, for releasing the documentary Silenced, and for making statements as relates to the subject matter of that video. If you don't believe me, read the news. From the BBC, Tommy Robinson jailed for contempt of court. Far-right activist Tommy Robinson has been jailed for 18 months after admitting contempt of court by repeating false claims against a Syrian refugee. Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, admitted 10 breaches of a high court order made in 2021 during a hearing at Woolwich Crown Court. Lawyers for the Solicitor General accused the 41-year-old of, quote, undermining, end quote, the rule of law. This is what they said in Canada when they jailed some of the alleged organizers of the most peaceful protest ever, the Ottawa trucker protest. They were arguing that it undermines the rule of law if you were to release these people who were accused of mischief into the general public, and I said no, it undermines the rule of law
to keep political prisoners.
And when it comes to Tommy Robinson, it doesn't undermine the rule of law to not jail someone for their words, which I believe are in fact, if not factually correct, at the very least sufficiently evidenced. It undermines the rule of law when you lock people up for 1.5 years for words. Some of you might not know the backstory to this, and if you don't, I invite you to go back and watch my interview with Tommy Robinson. He's been on the channel a few times, and he went into great detail about the story surrounding his documentary called Silenced.
My job as a journalist, I stand for freedom of speech, I stand for freedom of the press, and I failed because 3 years ago when I lost a court case in here and they bankrupted me to the tune of £1.6 million on a documentary, you're going to see the entire story was a lie, okay? I failed because I should have come out of court and I should have played you that film. Why didn't I play you that film? Because I was given a gagging order by this building, by this judge. I was silenced and I allowed them to silence me because I was scared. I was scared of 2 years in prison. I was scared of the effect that solitary confinement for that length of time would have on me. I was scared of jihadi gangs in jail. And I was scared of the effect it would have on my family. I failed me and I failed you. I'm not going to fail myself again.
There was a story that went viral in the UK, and it's very much similar to Nicholas Sandman in terms of what I believe to be its phoniness, of a Syrian refugee who was allegedly the victim of a racist attack by a white boy who was waterboarding him by pouring a bottle of water on his face. As it turns out, as can be expected, there was more context to that situation, and it turns out that allegedly the Syrian boy was not exactly the most well-behaved kid on earth, and that he allegedly had some prior interactions with this kid who poured the bottle of water on his face, which led to the confrontation.
Not very relatable, really.
No.
You know, about what he was going to do to sisters and what have you.
To Bailey?
To Bailey and to others.
Oh, and to others.
But not a very nice boy.
When you say, what was he going to do to the sisters?
Well, he told Bailey he was going to rape them.
Told Bailey he was going to rape his sister? Oh, no. And I've tried to argue that it was in the public's interest for him to know the truth about Jamal.
And that's was just retaliating.
Yeah.
You know, which most people do if somebody threatens their sisters.
Yeah.
And while the UK media and parliamentarians were going crazy with this story, it being evidence of white racism, white supremacy, whatever the hell you want to call it, it turns out that allegedly the Syrian boy might have not been the best behaved child on earth, despite what everyone was saying. And when Tommy Robinson came out with receipts for those allegations, he was sued for defamation, ordered to pay a massive sum of money, and also forbidden from issuing statements or repeating the statements that he made, which I believe he sufficiently evidenced with actual video evidence.
Jamal seems like every kid I've spoke to that he attacked was younger.
Yeah, bully.
Jamal?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding out.
Yeah. That's what I remember. He said he was going to stab him, I think, with a science or something.
Yeah.
If I remember. He said, yeah, so he goes, come on then, what are you saying now?
Because that thing of him getting caught with a knife in school, it's like, what? Caught with a knife and a screwdriver? Yeah. Bailey gets expelled for pouring a bottle of water?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Surely he gets...
You've got a statement on that?
No, because there's things missing. But I've got his dad mention it in the minutes of a meeting. His dad mentions it in a meeting with the school. His dad mentions about them catching him with a knife and a screwdriver. His dad brought it up. I've got it in black and white.
Yeah, so you've got a good case there.
I've got it. Yeah, he got caught with a knife. They can't deny it.
And for those of you who have not seen the documentary Silence, there is video evidence, testimonial evidence of teachers attesting to the poor behavior of the Syrian kid. There are people testifying that they were paid to remain silent. The movie is absolutely well done and provides receipts. But Tommy Robinson was prohibited from issuing those receipts or making the statements of those receipts by a court of law that went out there and literally determined the truth, which was contrary to the apparent truth. That's the backdrop. I hope I sufficiently accurately summarized it. Back to the article. Passing sentence, Judge Mr. Justice Johnson said the breaches of the injunction, which prevented Yaxley Lennon from repeating the allegations, were not, quote, accidental, negligent, or merely reckless, end quote, and the custodial threshold was, quote, amply crossed, end quote. The hearing on Monday was the culmination of events that date back to October 2018. That month, a video went viral showing how Jamal Hijazi, a Syrian in West Yorkshire, had been attacked by another teenager at school. Yaxley Lennon had posted his own response to 1 million Facebook followers, alleging that his investigation had established that Mr. Hijazi was a violent thug, a claim that was untrue. Not a claim that was untrue, a claim that was disputed, and a claim that Tommy Robinson had sufficient evidence to argue was sufficiently disputed. The Yaxley Lennon video spread widely, and the Syrian teenager and his family received death threats. 3 years later, Mr. Hijazi won 100,000 euros in damages when the High Court ruled Yaxley Lennon's claims against him had amounted to defamation. The court imposed an injunction on Yaxley Lennon, banning him from making the false claims again. In February 2023, Yaxley Lennon, who founded the long-defunct English Defence League, began repeating the claims and went on to post online a film claiming he had been, quote, silenced, end quote, by the state. That film may have been viewed at least 47 million times. Yeah, that video might have been viewed 47 million times, which might mean that there are tens of millions of people who truly understand the receipts behind that story and question the official narrative as well. But once you have parliamentarians in the UK going international with this racist hate crime against a Syrian refugee, it's kind of hard for them to walk it back from that point. And so they rely on the courts to make legal determinations of fact that are actually contradicted by evidence of fact, and then shut Tommy Robinson up and then lock him up when he opens his mouth by releasing the documentary that he was prohibited from releasing by a court order in the UK. Adrian Erdley, KC, which stands for King's Counsel for Solicitor General Sarah Sackman, told the court that Yaxley Lennon had intended to repeat the false allegations despite the injunction and then take, quote, evasive, end quote, measures. The article then goes on to repeat the same old cliched lines. No one is above the law, but my goodness, certain people are certainly beneath the law. They have come down with the full force of the law to lock Tommy Robinson up for 18 months for defying an absolutely outrageous court order in the first place that prevented him from making statements which he had sufficient evidence to make in the first place. So yeah, America, if you want to know what the future of your country looks like under a Kamala Harris, Tim Walz administration who wants to criminalize misinformation and disinformation, look no further than the United Kingdom, where the courts and the politicians determine what is true and what is not, and what you can say publicly and what you can't. And when you embarrass them with your words, they go ahead and lock you right up. And by the way, as at the time of shooting this, Steve Bannon just got out of prison. Sasha Wass, KC, for Yaxley Lennon, said he was a journalist who had been following his principles and was a passionate believer in free speech. Quote, the defendant has been neither sly nor dishonest, nor seeking gain for himself, end quote, she said. The judge said that the contempt of court had been aggravated because the defendant had repeated the claims after the beginning of proceedings against him, and he had not taken steps to stop the false claims continuing to be in circulation. The allegedly false claims that Tommy Robinson had good receipts to question. Now, appreciate the insidiousness of what's going on here. You have the courts literally determining what is fact for the purposes of what can be said publicly and what cannot be said publicly. In order to control thought, you need to control the words, and my goodness, they are starting with the words in order to control thought itself. But don't worry, Big Brother always gives you the chance to save yourself by saying, I love Big Brother. Listen to what the court says about him potentially cutting his sentence short. The sentence could in future be cut by 4 months if the defendant showed the court that he had taken steps to remove the offending film. But the judge added, quote, the defendant has not shown any inclination to comply with the injunction in the future. All of his actions suggest that he regards himself as above the law, end quote. This case was the 4th contempt case he has faced, having previously received a suspended sentence and a 6-month jail term. Yaxley Lennon has been separately charged with failing to unlock his phone for police when he was stopped and questioned at a port under counter-terrorism powers. He will next appear in court in relation to that allegation in November. You remember that? Tommy Robinson explained how he had been charged with something under the counter-terrorism measures so that they could compel him to open his phone, which he refused to do because he's a journalist and would not give away his sources. This is a wholesale attack, a persecution of Tommy Robinson, and it is a wholesale attack on freedom of speech, which there seems to be very little of left in the United Kingdom. George Orwell wisely said, I think it was in 1984, that if you want to know what the future looks like, it looks like the boot stamping down on the human face forever. Well, it's a little simpler than that. America, you want to know what the future looks like? Look to the United Kingdom and start taking measures to secure your God-given rights here in America, and that starts with, I won't tell you who to vote for, just tell you who not to vote for. That starts with not supporting the people who would shut you down, shut you up, and lock you up. That being the Biden-Harris-Walz regime. So I will be following this story. I will be keeping in as much touch as I possibly can with Team Robinson. I'm wishing him the best. 18 freaking months in jail. It's absolutely tyrannical. It's absolutely inhumane. But that is what the government of the United Kingdom has become. So that is it. I am off to do a live stream with Tyler Fisher as at the time of shooting this vlog. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. But most importantly, exercise, eat healthy, sunlight, talk to people in real life, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
These threats of intimidation or threats of imprisonment, it's like, I don't think I am in a bad situation at the minute. I keep saying I'm in a very bad situation. But so are they, yeah? Because you've got 2 options here. You either lock me up for the film, that 42, by the time I get to jail, 50, 60, 70 million people are going to watch. They know I reported the truth, yeah? So if you want to lock me up, there's no faith in your judiciary ever again for those 60 million people. Yeah? They know the truth. You can't lie to them. You can't put your stupid little headline out because they're going to be online like an army of online activists correcting your lie. So you either lock me up or you swallow it, yeah? Which is why I think they're building me up for the riots. That's what they're doing now, because I don't think at that time, I always knew if enough people watch this film, they're in a difficult situation for the judiciary's reputation. They're in a difficult situation. But they might not care about that. Maybe they don't care, but even if they don't care, we're going to lock me up for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you're going to lock me up, I'm still coming back out.